to the Housing Europe conference. My name is Eddy Adams. I'm moderating the session today. We've got an action-packed program for you, which I'll talk through shortly. It's great to be in this fabulous space. Mariamäe is a place of reinvention. This place has been a sugar factory, it's been a spirit distillery, it's been an aviation academy, it's now a film museum, so it's a place of continuous change and refreshing. And we're also in Tallinn, a city which is almost synonymous now with modernism, the birthplace of Skype, a place where every child learns how to code in primary school, so a young, modern, dynamic society. And I can't think of a better place for us to focus on today's theme, which is about digital livability and affordability. So looking at the opportunities, the threats, the challenges, and the disruption and change which is affecting all of our lives, and particularly we'll be talking today about housing and communities. So we're looking forward to diving into that with you. We have a hashtag. If you haven't left the Twitter and you're still hanging in there, we have a hashtag. It's hashtag Housing Europe 30. So please tweet, please tell the world what's going on. Please share the conversations that we're having, because there's lots of interest. Those of you who are involved in yesterday's meeting, there were lots of conversations happening there, which I think will play back into our discussions today. Just one practical thing, you should have a headset, because we've got a couple of opening presentations this morning, a few words in Estonian. We'll also have a final input in Estonian at the end of today. So if you don't have a headset, please grab one. We have our helpful interpreters here to work for us in English and Estonian, so everyone can stay in tune with the conversation. And just to get us started, we have a video message from Urve Palo, who is the Estonian Minister of Entrepreneurship and Information. And this presentation, the short welcome video, will be in Estonian, but with English and Russian subtitles. So thank you, guys.
Head konverentsil osalejad. Elamumajandus on väga oluline valdkond nii Eestis kui Euroopas ja selle tähtsus kasvab. Inimesed soovivad aina enam läbimõeldud, keskkonda sobivaid, säästlikke, aga samas mugavaid elutingimusi. Panustades kaasaegsetesse lahendustesse, mõeldes erinevate sotsiaalsete huvigruppide peale ning arvestades ka kultuuriliste tavadega, tagame elukeskkonna, mis pakub rõõmu paljudele põlvedele. Seega on kõigil, kes tegelevad elamumajandusega, alates poliitikate kujundamisest, projekteerimisest, ehitamisest, kuni korteriühistute ja kinnisvara arendajateni välja, kanda ühiskonnas suur roll ja vastutus. Üle Euroopa kehtestatakse peagi A-energiaklassi ehitusnõuded ning see seab nii koduomanikke kui ka ehitussektorit laiemalt uute väljakutsete ette. Kuid usun, et just sellised väljakutsed annavad tõuke modernsete lahenduste väljatöötamiseks ning selle tulemusena kerkivad hooned, mis on energiatõhusad, nutikad ja samas sellised, kus on mõnus elada ja töötada. Uued ehitusnõuded hakkavad tavaliselt kehtima uutele ehitistele, kuid ära ei saa unustada ka juba olemasolevaid hooneid, mis pärinevad aastakümnete ja isegi sadade tagant. Ka nende majade asukad peavad saama elada kaasaegses ja mugavas kodus, mis on keskkonna ja rahakotisõbralik. Kaasaegsete tehnoloogiate kasutamine amortiseerunud elamutes on ehk suuremgi väljakutse kui päris uute majade ehitamine. Energiatõhusate ning nutikate majade planeerimises, projekteerimises ja ehitamises saame aga kõik üksteisele toeks olla ja parimaid praktikaid ning teadmisi jagada. Eestiski panustame järjest enam sellesse, et välja töötada tipptehnoloogilisi lahendusi ja rajada näidismaju, mille ehitamisel teevad koostööd meie teadlased ja ehitussektori esindajad. Selleks, et ehitussektor suudaks pakkuda nutikaid ja samas soodsaid lahendusi, olla konkurentsivõimeline ja atraktiivne ka noortele, peab ta järjest enam automatiseeruma ja digitaliseerima. Nii on Eesti valitsus seadnud digitaliseerimise üheks prioriteettegevuseks ehitussektoris, mille tulemusena tahame näha, et Eesti ehitussektori tootlikkus vähemalt kahekordistub. Kuigi riigi e-lahenduste vallas on Eesti esimeste hulgas, siis e-ehitusvaldkonnas astume alles esimesi samme. Usun, et tänane konverentski on meile suurepärane võimalus saada kontakte ning kogemusi selle valdkonna tegijatelt. Vastu saame pakkuda kogemusi riigi ja ühiskonna digitaliseerimisest. Meil on e-residentsus, riigipilv, XD ja lugematul arvul avalikke e-teenuseid. Viimase 25 aasta jooksul on Eesti teinud läbi olulise arengu. Muutunud on nii majandus kui ka elukeskkond. Välja on kujunenud tõmbekeskused, kus inimesed soovivad elada ja töötada ning paratamatult on üle Eesti piirkondi, kus on toimunud rahvastiku väljaränne. Selle tulemusena on jäänud osad eluruumid tühjaks ning muutunud kasutuskõlbmatuks. Samas on palju piirkondi, kus vaatamata nõudluse olemasolule uusi korterelamuid ei rajata. Turuhind jääb paraku ehitushinnale alla. Samuti tuleb riiklikku elamumajandust arendades silmas pidada, et elamisväärseid elupindasid jaguks ka rahalistes raskustes või vähekindlustatud elanikkonnagruppidele. Tegemist on niisiis mitmeid poliitikaid hõlmavate väljakutsetega, mis vajavad kompleksseid lahendusi, uute poliitikate väljatöötamisi ja head avalikku ning erasektori koostööd. Paljude riikide, sealhulgas Eesti elamufondi jätkusuutlikkuse kontekstis, on suurimaks probleemiks olnud valdkonna alarahastus, võrrelduna näiteks põllumajandusprogrammidele eraldatud rahaliste vahendite mahuga. Seetõttu hindan kõrgelt tänase konverentsi korraldajaid ja kõikide elamuvaldkonna huvigruppide panust elamumajanduse arendamisse ning jagan seisukohta, et valdkonna toetamine peab olema stabiilne ning tulevikku vaatav. Targad otsused erasektori investeeringute stimuleerimiseks ja nutikad tehnoloogilised lahendused on elamumajanduse tulevik. Iga riik on eriline oma kogemusega, mistõttu loodan, et meil on palju üksteiselt õppida. Teadmiste jagamine ja koostöövõrgustike arendamine tagab kõigile edu. Soovin teile viljakat konverentsi ning tervitan teid meie ilusas pealinnas Tallinnas. Loodan, et lisaks töisele konverentsile ja aruteludele jääb teil aega ka linna peal jalutada ning nautida varasuvist linnaloodust, mis ehitatud hoonestusele tervikliku rohelise raami annab.
Okay, I'm not sure whether you applaud someone who's not here, but we could give her a round of applause. There's always a bit of a strange dynamic when that happens, but I think in that very short presentation we touched upon many of the things we're going to talk about today, the hardware, the software, the potential for greater productivity, but the risks of further marginalization. So some of those are the key themes we'll be dropping into. But let's keep moving on, and let's invite the Mayor of Tallinn, Taavi, also a EUROCITIES Executive Committee member, perhaps now to say a few words of welcome for us. Thank you. Yep, sorry. There we are.
Thank you. You're welcome. Head konverentsi külalised, head korraldajad, tere tulemast Tallinnasse. Dear friends, welcome to Tallinn. Üks 100-aastane maja on sama väärikas kui 100-aastane riik. Laotud korralikule fundamendile, kaitstud võimalikult hästi välisjõudude eest, tuult pidavate akende ja kindla katusega. Eesti 100. juubeliaastal on suur au ja rõõm, et just Tallinn saab neil päevil kanda Euroopa elamupealinna tiitlit ja tervitada meie linnas maailma kõige mõjukamaid elamumajanduse ühendusi. Housing Euroopa, Euroopa Majanduskomisjoni elamu- ja maamajanduskomiteed ning rahvusvahelist elamukooperatiivide liitu. Tallinn on võtnud kindlaks suunaks Euroopa rohelise pealinna tiitli, mistõttu on meie linna fookuses keskkonnasõbrelik ja säästlik eluaseme poliitika. Meie renoveerimiskogemus on maailmas palju tähelepanu teeninud ja ka Euroopas eeskujuks. Üheks meie elamu ehituse näiteks on õpetajate kodu. Selles mullu valminud energiasäästlikku majja on majutatud linna koolide ja lasteaedade pedagoogid. Majas on kokku 75 korterit, projekteerimisel ja ehitamisel kasutati parimaid energiatõhususe ja taastuvenergia lahendusi, mis tagavad võimalikult madalad ülalpidamiskulud. Lisaks innovaatilistele renoveerimislahendustele on Tallinnas üheks märksõnaks energiatõhusus läbi alternatiivsete energiaallikate. Kuu aega tagasi avasime koostöös Tallinna Energiaagentuuriga Tallinna linna esimese munitsipaalomanduses oleva kontorihoone, katusel asuva päikeseelektrijaama ning olen kindel, et see ei jää Tallinnas viimaseks. Enamik pealinnastest elavad korteriühistutes. Käesoleva aastas algusest kehtima hakanud seadusega said kõigist, ka väikestest korterelamutest korteriühistud. Tuleb tõdeda, et korteriühistute süsteem toimib meil tänu inimeste ettevõtlikkuse ja edumeelsusele hästi. Paneel elamurajoonidest on tänaseks päevaks kehvas seisus ja renoveerimata hooneid juba suhteliselt raske leida. Tallinn toetab korteriühistuid keskmiselt 1 miljoni euroga aastas. Iga toetus korteriühistule on ka toetus linnakeskkonna paremaks ja kaunimaks muutmiseks. Üks suuremaid korteriühistutele suunatud projekte on fassaadid korda. Selle projektiga toetatakse ühistuid renoveerimiskulude katmisel, et aidata ellu viia energiasäästuga seotud projekte, et vähendada energiakulusid. Projektid Hoovid korda raames toetatakse korterelamute hoovialade korrastamist. Hoovide korrastamiseks on saanud toetust 1200 korteriühistut. Tallinna märksõnadeks on ka munitsipaal- ja sotsiaalmajad, kus ühtekokku on ligi 4500 korterit ja sotsiaalmajades üle 500 majutuskoha. Suur on ka nõudlus soodsate hindadega üürikorterite järele. Tallinna linnalt taotleb eluruumi üle 2700 inimese. Vajadus on aga kordi suurem, seetõttu peab munitsipaal- ja sotsiaalkorterite rajamisega kindlasti jätkama. Kõige selle juures on oluline meeles pidada, et digitaalajastu mõjud on saamas linnades järjest enam nähtavaks ja kujundavad rolli meie tuleviku elukeskkonnas. Andmehaldus, targa linna ideed ja koostööl põhinevad juhtimismudelid on vaid osa laiemast järjest kasvavast trendist. Kõik hoogsad ideed saavad alguse aga meie eluasemetest, meie kodudest. Tänud veel kord kõigile tulijatele, õhulist mõttelendu, meie kodu ja keskkonna hoidvaid ideid tuleviku linnade loomisel. Soovin teile edukat konverentsi. Ja nii nagu juba soovis ka proua minister, kindlasti võtke aega, et vaadata ka imekaunist Tallinna. Aitäh teile!
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much for those words. I'd like to hand over now to Andres Jaadla, Andres is a member of Committee of the Regions. He's also a well-known key figure in the social housing sector here in Estonia, with his role as the chairman of the Estonian Union of Cooperative Housing Associations. Andres, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much and welcome once again everybody to Estonia. Aga ma jätkan eesti keeles. Head sõbrad nii Euroopast kui ka üle kogu maailma. Tõesti, Eesti Korterite Liidu juhina on mul hea meel teid siin Eestis ja Eesti imekaulis pealinnas Tallinnas tervitada. Ma tänan, et võtsite aega ja võtsite meie kutse vastu, et saate need juunikuu päevad veeta siin meie valgete ööde ja tärkava loodusega kaunis riigis. Tähistame me ju selle konverentsiga ja selle üldkoosolekuga Housing Europe'i 30. sünnipäeva. See toimub ka Eesti Vabariik 100 ametlike ürituste raames, kus me mõtleme tagasi nendele aastatele, millal Eesti riik loodi ja kuidas kogu areng on Eestis toimunud. Kui me vaatame ühistute arengut, siis Eesti Korteriühistute Liit tähistas 2 aastat tagasi oma 20. sünnipäeva. 20 aastaga oleme jõudnud Eestis palju teha. Tulles Nõukogude ühiskonnakorrast oli meie mentaliteet ja mõtlemine hoopis teistsugune 20 aastat tagasi kui täna. Täna me võime uhkust tunda ühistute üle, kes on loonud korra linnaruumi, korrastanud oma majad ja toonud esile renoveerimispraktikaid, millega me võime uhkust tunda Eestis oma elanike ees, näidates neile taskukohaseid arveid, aga samas ka Euroopas. Usun, et paljud teist võtsid osa eilsetest õppevisiitidest, kus me külastasime ühte Eesti parimaid näiteid sotsiaalelamu valdkonnas Tallinna õpetajate maja. Külastasime Eesti suurimat korteriühistut eraarenduse valdkonnas, Veega residentsi, endise ühiselamu ja merekooli baasil tehtud suurepärast kaasaegset elamut. Külastasime ka Eesti ja ma lausa julgen öelda Euroopa esimest ligi nullenergia tasandil renoveeritud kortermaja, mis originaalselt oli ehitatud 86. aastal, mis on läbi viidud moodulrenoveerimisega. Külastasime Õismäel 9-kordset maja, mille lahendused teevad au, ma usun, paljudele majadele üle kogu Euroopa. Ja me oleme täna tegelikult siin sellepärast, et ühelt poolt jagada oma kogemusi ja arutada, et kuhu me võime jõuda läbi digitaalühiskonna, läbi kõikide nende nutilahenduste, mida pakub meile järjest arenev e-keskkond. Aga teistpidi oleme siin selleks, et arutleda, kuivõrd kogu see kiirelt arenev maailm saab meile olla taskukohane, saab meile olla elamisväärne linnakeskkonnana. Siin me peame koostööd tegema nii riigi kui linnaga. Meil on hea meel, et Tallinna ja Eesti riigi näol meil on väga tugevad partnerid Korterite Liidus olemas. Aga teiselt poolt me oleme siin ka koos kui liikmete ühendus, kui inimeste ühendus, kes tegelikult tunnevad samamoodi siin Eestis, tunnevad samamoodi Malaisias, tunnevad samamoodi Kanadas, Ameerika Ühendriikides, Euroopa eri riikides, Saksamaal, Inglismaal, aga ka väljaspool Euroopa Liitu, Armeenias ja Albaanias ja paljudes teistes riikides, kelle esindajad täna siin on kohal. Nii et majad ei koosne ju ainult tehnilistest lahendustest, vaid majad koosnevad inimestest. Ja täna me oleme siin Eestis nii-öelda liikmesorganisatsioonide algtasandilt. Täna meil on siin liikmed Saaremaalt, Tallinnast, kaugemalt Eestist ja on päris elamuorganisatsioonide tippjuhid, kes juhivad sadu ja tuhandeid kortereid üle Euroopa ja maailmas. Et selle sideme tunnetus on minu jaoks oluline. Et see seob meid selliseks terviklikuks, üle-euroopaliseks ja miks mitte ka ülemaailmseks terviklikuks eluaseme pereks ja ma arvan, sellise ühtsustunde ja õlgõlatunde tunnetamine on oluline ja läbi just sarnaste konverentside, ühiste koosolekute see tunne tekib, kus me tunneme üksteist, teame üksteist ja saame omavahel vahetada ka kogemusi. Mul on selle üle hea meel, nii et ma tõesti tervitan kõiki teid, kes te olete siia Eestisse tulnud ja me ausalt öeldes valmistusime selleks ürituseks päris kaua ja hea meel, et ka Tallinna linn meile väga jõuliselt siin toeks tuli ja spetsiaalse töörühma moodustas, kellega me siis seda organiseerimistööd läbi viisime. Ma loodan, et me suudame anda parima, et teile selle konverentsi korraldus ka meeldib. Lõpetuseks tahaksin ma öelda seda, et see teema, mille üle me täna arutleme, on väga sisuline, tulevikku vaatav ja ka natuke olemuslikult filosoofiline. Et meie linnade kiire areng, meie järjest enam suurenev linnastumine, kas ta alati märkab seda inimest, kelle võib-olla baasvajadused ei ole nii kiiresti muutunud, kui meid ümbritsev elu ja meie järjest sisse tulev digimaailm seda nõuab. Kus on see piir elamisväärse, taskukohase ja digitaalse linna vahel? Ma arvan, seda me läbi suurepäraste esinejate täna kuulame ja saame üheskoos arutada. Tänan teid kõiki siia tulemast ja tõesti mul on südamest hea meel, et te olete siin. Aitäh teile ja soovin meile kõigile mõnusat ja sisukat konverentsi. Aitäh!
Thank you very much, Andres. Our final welcome comment is from Cédric van Styvendael, who's the president of Housing Europe. Cédric, nice to see you, and the floor is yours.
Nice to see you too. Mr. the Mayor of Tallinn, dear Andreas, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I hope your trip to join this lovely city of Tallinn was good. Hope for those who arrived yesterday that the evening was good too. And thanks again, Andreas, for the organization. It was perfect, but I said as usual, you know. The former mayor of Denver, Wellington Webb, marked the beginning of the previous decade with a rather memorable quote while presiding the US Conference of Mayors. The 19th century was the century of empires, the 20th that of nation states, and the 21st century will be that of cities. I think that the years that followed tend to prove him right. Indeed, this is the case for European cities that seem to be gaining power and be willing to play a more prominent role. This trend has been unfolding both at national level but also at European, with the urban agenda for the EU being a clear indicator for this. At the same time, the digital transformation raises questions concerning the very nature of our cities. And we're indeed experiencing the dawn of smart city. Before answering this question, let us first ask ourselves, what is really a smart city? Personally, I would agree that a city is only smart when it can secure a favorable framework for the provision of affordable housing for all, when it includes the fight against inequality in its priority list, when it delivers quality public spaces all over its territory, and when it doesn't allow the multiplication of segregated neighborhoods or ghettos. To summarize, in fine, there are no smart cities if there are no fair and not care. This is why we choose to talk about the digitized city, a term coined by Charles Landry in our event today. How shall government and local authorities ensure that livability and affordability will be engraved in the DNA of the digital city? What are the basic principles for a fair and efficient transition towards a truly smart future of our home? In what way can we new governments and collaboration models absorb the developing dynamic of civil society and even individuals? How does the next day of construction and renovation look like? Can disrupting effect of platform like Airbnb be restructured in a way that actually serve a vision for a collaborative economy? As you can see, we have a lot of questions. Hope we can find some answer together today. But overall, I must say that I'm an optimist that our time equips us with more tools than ever before to shape a better future for our communities with decent housing for all at the center. I would like also to take the opportunity to thank the city of Tallinn and of course its mayor, but also your deputy mayor, Rönkä, the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communication of Estonia, especially Ministry of Entrepreneurship and Information Technology, Urve Palo, for their support and commitment in housing and energy efficiency. I would like to extend my gratitude as well to our host, EKYL, for the organization. We truly appreciate your support. Welcome to Tallinn for what I believe is a truly timely debate. Let's us today's event to help navigate our sector together through the digital wave towards more innovative, livable and affordable homes. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Cédric. Thank you very much, gentlemen. If you want to go and, I know that the mayor has other things to do. I think, Jaadla, you're going to stay with us later on today. Shortly, we're going to dive into the content and get down to business. But before we do, what we want to try and do during the course of today is involve you in our conversations. And we'll do that by having a roving mic and coming down and getting you involved in the discussions. But we're also going to do it through using a bit of kit called Mentimeter. And if you look in your pack, you've got a little piece of paper here which explains how Mentimeter works. Some of you may have looked at it already. A high proportion, 99.9, 100% of you will all have smartphones with you. Could you get your phones out, please? And if you look at the instructions, basically if you open your browser and open up www.menti.com, that's MENTI.com. I'm reading off the instruction sheet here. And then you introduce the 6-digit figure at the top of this screen here, the 277508. That will then take you into a little voting screen where you have an opportunity to select a couple of questions. We're running through the whole thing now, so maybe we should go back to the opening one. Everybody okay? Are we getting there? So let's go back to the questions. Yeah. So the first question is about your knowledge of Estonian geography, and if yours is as good as mine, then you'll be randomly choosing. So this is about the city of Tartu. So is it the financial capital, the student capital, the party capital, or the summer capital? And I can only suppose that our Estonian colleagues are helping us get the right answer here, because the answer is the summer capital. Okay, so Tartu is the cultural capital. Tallinn, of course, is the official capital. Pärnu is the summer capital. Let's try another question, just to familiarize ourselves with this bit of software. This is one you're more likely to know. This is about how many of us are going to be living in urban environments by 2050. So we know that we are an urban species. We're talking today about urbanization, about the impact of digital in our shared spaces. We'll be talking about tolerance. We'll be talking about coexistence, the impact of digital and all of those things. So what do we think? By 2050? In fact, by 2050, the UN anticipates that globally, 66% of the population will be living in urban areas. In Europe, it's a bit higher. In Europe, it's already 71%. But globally, by 2050, we will be 2/3 of the global population will be urban. So this is a kind of, you know, it's a massive trend everywhere with huge implications as we move to a planet with a population of 8 billion. And then looks like question 3, which is also an Estonian question, again, just to help us familiarize ourselves with how this works. So Estonia is covered by 52% of what? Water. There's loads of water when you fly in, so really nice people. There's loads of really nice people. But forest is, of course, the correct answer. So yeah. And then let's just do final. Yeah, we've got one more of these. So again, just rolling on to the next one. This is about the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. If you've been involved in some of the urban EU partnership working, you'll know there's a closer interface between the urban agenda in Europe and these SDGs, which are obviously global targets, which is a good thing. And yes, of course, there are 17 of them. So yeah, everybody here is well tuned to that agenda. So there are 17 goals. The top one is obviously tackling poverty. But many of those are themes which we'll talk about today. They're about making sure that people have safe places to live. They're around the access to learning, a whole range of key kind of priorities for our kind of future policymakers. And then the final question, number 5, is about Housing Europe. Many of you, most of you, were probably involved in the conversations yesterday. This is Housing Europe's 30th conference, as we've heard. There's a now huge established network. This is about some of the themes which Housing Europe's involved in. So which of the following topics is Housing Europe particularly focused on? We've got digitalization of energy management, gaming, circular economy, industrialization. I should say to you, this is a bit of a trick question. This is Michele's having a little bit of fun with you, because the answer is all of the above. All of those are all themes which Housing Europe is involved in. And I think probably all of these themes, looking at the gaming, circular economy, I'm sure we'll talk about today in terms of the construction stuff, upscaling, renovation, digitalization, clearly we'll talk about. All of these things are in the mix in our discussions today. And maybe before I open the first panel session and invite our keynote speaker and discussants to join us, let's jump to the next question, please. Question 6. And this is just to get a sense of where you are in the audience. And this question here is about how you feel about the public approach to this whole digital agenda. Because in a sense, when we've already talked about Airbnb, we've talked about, let's go to the next question, please. We talked about Airbnb, we already talked about disruption, we've talked about the kind of impact of tech. The minister talked about efficiency, talked about e-design, e-building. But in a sense, policymakers, we're kind of playing catch up. Both policy and practice, we're trying to react and to second guess and anticipate where all of this is headed. So just to get a feel for where you guys are in the audience, how do you think we are handling this agenda at a national level, at a local level? How good are we at getting to grips with some of these huge issues that we see all around us? Okay, 13% is a long story. It is a long story. More of that later, yeah. More than half of you, somewhat. We're kind of hopefully optimistic. You know, as Cédric said, lots of us are optimists. We can see, you know, we're reacting, but also there are positive things, but there are still some huge questions, as we'll go into shortly. 17% of you, almost 1 in 5, you saying no, and then an equal number saying yes. So a split. Let's maybe come back to that at the end of the day, actually, and see how and if that changes. Okay, so you should be comfortable with that now, reasonably clear about how that's going to work. We'll be jumping in at various points in the day, but let's dive into the agenda. And our first session is a lively kickstart for our day. We're going to ask, first of all, maybe ask our 2 discussants, first of all, to come and join us. Lorna Wilson from Scottish Federation of Housing Associations. has a great title of Innovation and Future Thinking Lead for the sector in Scotland. And from a little bit nearer to home here, Kimmo Rönkä from the is Future Living Specialist with Housing Fair Finland. And then both of these guys have the happy task of listening to and then playing back some of the key messages from our keynote speaker today. I'm really delighted and super stoked to welcome Adam Greenfield to the stage. Adam is somebody who is a thought leader, a writer, someone who's right at the front edge of this whole agenda. He's been involved with Razorfish in Tokyo. He's worked with Nokia around their whole concept of human interfaces. Has been a designer of content, teacher at NYU in the States, also at LSE, London School of Economics, closer to where I'm based, and also has been writing some really provocative, interesting, super stimulating content, which is bang on the money in terms of what we're talking about today. So, ladies and gentlemen, will you fasten your seatbelts, buckle up, and give a big round of applause to Adam Greenfield. Adam, good to see you.
Thanks, Eddy. Wow, it's great to be back in Tallinn. Can you all hear me okay? What an honor to be here for the 30th anniversary of this event. So the first thing I'm going to do to you is apologize because I am a New Yorker, I do speak fast, and we have a lot of content to get through in the next half hour, so bear with me here. Talk today is called Beyond the Smart City, the participatory production of participatory space. And if you'll excuse me, I just want to do something real quickly here because I don't have my presenter display up. There we go, that's what we wanted. Except we want to play. Why is this not playing? Okay, groovy. No, hang on just a second. You know, the thing about working in technology is that this kind of thing always happens. And this is how we're going to do it. Apologize. Goodness gracious me, how are we doing now? There we go. Okay, groovy. Sorry about that, wasting time. Okay, so for the last 15 years or so, I've been involved in an area that I like to think of as networked urbanism, which is a close consideration of everyday urban life in the presence of and conditioned by networked digital information technologies specifically. I have absolutely no expertise in and no ability to discuss any other class or order of technologies. It's strictly for me about the networked digital information technologies. And I've discussed these things from the perspective of theory. You know, I've written a couple of books on this subject, including most recently a book called Radical Technologies, The Design of Everyday Life. But as Eddy mentioned, I've also done this from the perspective of practice. I had my own shop, I built things, I engineered things. Here's a transit card, RFID transit card, that used the act of tapping it on the turnstile to power an e-paper display on the card itself, letting you know how much money you had on it. Here is an interactive kiosk that we built for the cities of Helsinki and for the city of Chicago. Ultimately never rolled out, never deployed. But so you can see that I've considered these questions from both thinking through them and actually working through them with my hands. And I think this gives me a fairly particular perspective about the set of questions we're going to be discussing. And chief among these perspectives is this: networked urbanism has absolutely nothing at all to do with the smart city. As a matter of fact, I don't use the language around the smart city. I think it's a buzzword. I think it's close to content free. I think that nobody can actually tell you what it means. As a matter of fact, the smart city exists, if it exists at all, almost exclusively in the form of renderings. Renderings like these of Masdar City in the United Arab Emirates, or this rendering of Nusongdo City in South Korea, or this rendering of an entirely fictional city. And I think the thing that we need to bear very closely in mind is that renderings just aren't reality. And in particular, they almost never feature actual human beings. They feature render ghosts, abstractions, images of people without a history, without a background, without a politics, without a subjectivity. They don't tell us what we need to know if we're going to design equitable, safe, just, meaningful, resonant, textured urban spaces. What do we know about technology in public space, though? Well, I can tell you this. Every single factor that the contemporary city is designed to accommodate is in the process of rapid and highly turbulent change. Work is changing. It's becoming highly automated. The process of production is changing. It's becoming digitized, distributed, broken up into small workshops. Mobility is clearly changing, where once it was something that brought people face to face with one another in public transit, we tend to be now encapsulated in our own literal capsules, zooming around the city, separated from one another, not having to confront the other in the urban fold. Logistics is changing, becoming again automated. Sociality itself is changing. So where we used to convene and congregate in spaces to encounter one another, now we mostly socialize through the intercession of these devices. Obviously, commerce is changing. You don't need to go anywhere to buy anything anymore. Now it's handled by an immaterial, evanescent, imminent internet. The nature of community is changing too, because when we do come together to celebrate one another in public space, increasingly our presence there is registered, tabulated, and calibrated by systems beyond our control and very frequently beyond our understanding. Even the nature of something as crucial to getting along with one another as reputation and trust is changing. Something that is built up over time, over thousands of brief encounters with our neighbors, with one another, in the street, in the places we shop, in the places we see one another, being replaced by a notion of social credit currently being rolled out by the Chinese government. A single numeric score that's supposed to tabulate everything you are as a person, your value to the public, your value to the community, your standing as a neighbor. So whither the city under such circumstances? What happens to these urban environments that we've evolved over the last 1,000 years or so to accommodate our needs, our preferences, our predilections, and our politics? These spaces were designed to support processes that are no longer there. Now, sometimes that's a good thing. As anybody who's gotten to my advanced age knows, there were all kinds of processes that the classic city supported that weren't always a whole lot of fun or necessarily particularly productive. Waiting on lines for things was never very much fun, especially when the store had run out of something that you wanted. So there are very, very many ways in which some of these evolutions offer us things. Of course they do. We wouldn't have accepted them into our lives if they didn't furnish us with some enhancement of convenience or affect. But importantly, these processes produced urban subjects, people, interiorities, experiences of urban place and time, who are fading from the scene. And what those subjects are being replaced by are the following: new actors, new politics, new subjectivities, including ones that we might not particularly appreciate or even enjoy, as represented by these young individuals. These guys are huge, huge stars on Instagram or Snapchat. And there's a recent controversy about them. They were walking through a forest in Japan, and they came upon the corpse of a man who had hanged himself from a tree. And they gathered around to make a promotional video around the man hanging from the tree. They laughed at it. So not all of these subjectivities that are induced by our encounter with distributed, digitized media may necessarily be ones that we appreciate, approve of, or even understand. The city is filling up with new participants. In some ways, it's becoming populated by people who are not people, by post-human occupants of the city. Indeed, there are all around us new orderings of power, here represented by a group of slum women in India who are learning how to 3D print things in their own neighborhood, print things that they might have had to buy on the open market before, or couldn't have afforded to buy, or never would have had the opportunity to have made available to them. Now they can design and fabricate them locally at an extremely low cost. Of course, these new orderings of power cut both ways. A lot of the grandeur in the financial networks, it seems, is leaking into the cryptocurrency sector, a sector which most of us understand even less well than we did the existing financial practices. So power has ways of occluding itself and occluding its workings in the world, the more technical it becomes. And this presents problems for those of us who are subject to the workings of that power and have no ability to see into it or transform it for our own needs. Nevertheless, what we see here, when taken in whole, is an entirely new envelope of urban potentials. And one of them is particularly relevant to the work of affordable, equitable, safe, just, and decent housing. Let's consider it. Let's take the idea that productive capacity is now deployed in these small, clean city center workshops that I've been discussing. What we see here is the means of production distributed. So the idea originally behind 3D printing, as epitomized by this first RepRap device, was that the very first thing that you would make when you got your hands on one was another one, right? This was literally the very first rep wrap ever made, and that's the second one. The idea was that there would be a geometric expansion of productive capacity in the world. Now, as it turns out, this did not come to pass, or at least not just yet. But what has happened is a radical distribution of the power to build useful objects at all scales. We're talking about not merely 3D printing, but laser cutters, CNC milling machines, looms, digital devices for the production of material artifacts at all scales, which are coming rapidly down in price and have more and more environmental efficiency baked into them. They're being distributed in the world in the context of an increased demand for democratic participation. Now, when you take digital fabrication technologies and you use them with repositories of freely downloadable digital specifications, so these are the recipes for all kinds of useful things in the world: components, tools, clothing, other forms of machinery. All of these things available for free download. They've been licensed under either an open source or a free license. They've been uploaded to the internet. They can be downloaded by anybody into their digital fabrication engine and used to produce things locally. You can make any sort of thing that you imagine locally and on demand. Here, a shoe for a number, this is something like under €1 to produce this shoe. If some significant percentage of the world's 8 billion human beings still need to move through the day without footwear, this is the sort of thing that begins to move against that. Not our donations of our old shoes, and certainly not the productions of Adidas or Nike, but things that people make themselves in their villages, in their communities, for radically lowered cost. And not merely, again, things at the personal or intimate scale of the body, all kinds of goods. What is it that we see being printed here? Can you imagine? It's a component of a building. This is an image that many of you have probably seen by now. This was in the news very widely over the last couple of days. This was something called Project Milestone at the University of Eindhoven in the Netherlands. A micro community of houses that were built in a matter of days from scratch, from nothing, 3D printed, put together. What prospect does this open up for us but the radical prospect, the transformation of urban land use itself? When people are equipped with this productive capacity, they can arm themselves with tools that they've never before had access to, take direct control of the land, and make things themselves. The very first thing we see isn't so much even urban infill, a notion that's become increasingly trendy over the last several years, but something I think of as urban kintsukuroi. Kintsukuroi is a notion from the Japanese pottery tradition. It means golden repair. And the metaphor is this. It's a little bit more than a metaphor, but take a vessel like this. It has been dropped. It's a ceramic vessel. It's been dropped, shattered on the ground. The pieces were picked up, and they were annealed together with a golden seam. Now, in this particular aesthetic tradition, this is considered to make it more beautiful than it was before. I personally don't care much for gold, but I think, we can all agree it's a relatively attractive object. But its aesthetic qualities aren't really the point. The point is that the vessel is now stronger than it was before, having gone through the process of having been broken and repaired. It turns out that the gold has a higher tensile strength than the pottery itself. So you could drop this vessel from the same height onto the same surface a second time, and it would not shatter. It has become, in a very real sense, anti-fragile. The ethos here is one not merely of restoration, but of improvement. And this is precisely what it is, I believe, we can now do in our cities through the advent of the technologies that we've been discussing. Maybe not the kind of improvement that you're used to. So let's discuss a couple of case studies here. Let's look at Aarhus, the second city of Denmark. This is a disused rail hub that runs right into the center of town, a spur for rail freight. It's called Godsbanen, freight yard. Now, after the National Railway decided it no longer did move freight into the center of Aarhus, the rail hub became abandoned. And as happens with abandoned spaces, it slowly began to attract detritus, attract waste and criminality and rats and graffiti and all of the signs of an abandoned urban space. This is what it looks like today. This is something very curious that's been done on the site called the Institute for X. The Institute for X is a bottom-up experiment in the reuse of urban space. Here's another scene from the wetland that they've created there. There are two processes, in fact, running at Gårdsbanan. There is the Institute for X, a bottom-up experiment, and there is a civic series of material workshops and labs for the production of things. This is a textile shop. This is a chair that was built with a laser cutter in the 3D matter fabrication shop. Taken together, all of these technologies were brought to bear on the site itself to repair, restore, and make actively present and valuable a piece of land that was considered to be without worth and had in fact been abandoned and given over to the rats and the rain. A site which no longer had any value for anybody was restored through practical intervention, split evenly between the state and the bottom-up, self-driven, self-organized initiatives of the people themselves. Let's take a look at an even more radical example. Trust me, we're getting to a place where housing becomes relevant, although it hasn't quite appeared yet. This is a site in downtown Madrid. This is called El Campo de Cebada, the barley field. It was a beloved community market. It was being redeveloped for private interest by private equity at the height of the bubble, financial bubble leading up to the 2007-2008 crash. Following the crash, the private equity company fled from the scene. They detected that they were no longer going to be able to clear the return on investment they were hoping to realize on the site. They abandoned the site. And again, this is a prime site in the La Latina neighborhood of Madrid. Became abandoned, overrun, used by junkies to shoot up, filled up with trash, all that sort of thing. A collective of local activists cut the chain link fence around the site sometime in 2009, 2010, and slowly began using their skills to redevelop it, using precisely the technologies that we've been discussing. They were a collective of primarily of architects in Zuluark. And they began to use these technologies to build on the site itself a parliament for the discussion of what to do with the site. And this became the first draw of what is by now a very, very robust, thriving, community-oriented, community-run, community-designed, developed, and utilized site where previously there was nothing. It's very elaborate now. What we begin to see here are activities of a scale, of an order, that they begin to suggest a leap from the active utilization of space for recreation or creation to those for housing, sheltering the human being in an environment that is not always clement for it. City center, on-demand, digital and analog fabrication used in the production of urban space in the context of emergent practices of urban democracy. Here epitomized by an extraordinary infrastructure that's produced in a matter of days during the umbrella movement in Hong Kong in 2014, where 3 separate large-scale sites in the city were occupied over the course of 3 months by people who created every single piece of an infrastructure you would need for the ordinary processes of everyday life out of scrap, out of very little more than nothing. So schools, clinics, areas to take care of the elderly, areas to eat and dine and learn with one another, all produced overnight on the streets of Hong Kong, on the highway overpasses, occupying the space in a very real sense. People stay there around the clock. Take everything that we've discussed together, and they begin to suggest something very exciting indeed. Now, I apologize for the next slide. I've already spent a couple of minutes insulting renderings, and I'm afraid that what I have to offer you is in fact a rendering. But it's something very provocative and interesting to me indeed. What we see here are the sorts of digital production processes that we've discussed used to produce bolt-on housing that is not merely urban infill, but urban kintsukuroi, something that transforms, restores, repairs, and improves an environment that was overrun and in fact destroyed by capital. An environment where people can live, an environment where people can act, an environment where people can realize their sense of their own creative potential. And most importantly of all, take an active role in housing and sheltering themselves from the conditions that now surround them. Now, we know a couple of things about life in the urban 21st century. We know that it's already under a fair amount of stress, not least from the environment around us, which is changing in ways that we barely understand and is beginning indeed to present affronts to all of the systems, tactics, structures that we've organized to protect ourselves from the world in the past. Structures like these can be designed from the outset to adapt to complexity, contingency, and stress. They can be designed to be flexible, mobile, scalable, autonomously organized, rapidly mounted and demounted. They have all of the ingredients of something that responds to the conditions in the cities that now surround us, cities in which we live under a very significant amount of pressure. Consider, this is an image of my hometown, New York City, during Superstorm Sandy. I don't know if you can see this. This is almost all of downtown Manhattan blacked out by a single storm, a storm that was once reckoned to be what we call a 1,000-year storm. This sort of storm now happens every couple of years. Our cities are under stress not merely from capital, but from the natural environment itself. So hopefully what these new technologies offer us, the new subjectivities offer us, the new productive capacity, the envelope of potentials we now have access to offers us, is a way to redress the imbalance that exists in our cities at present. And what I mean to close with is a consideration of the most critical question of all. This question: who are cities for? Among an audience like this, in present company, I think it's taken as a given that these are the people that cities are for, us. But what if that's not the entire case? What if we're not the protagonists of the story? In fact, what if the story isn't about us at all? What if we've already made the decisive leap to the post-human city? Well, I'm going to argue to you that the post-human is already here in a less felicitous way than that I've been discussing. I don't merely mean post-human here as a technical consideration. I mean it as a social consideration as well, because our cities are organized primarily for the convenience of these entities. We're not necessarily the protagonists of the story. The post-human agents, the post-human actors, the post-human occupants of the city are the corporations, the private entities, these uncanny, deathless inhabitants of human cities, transforming them for their own needs. In London, where I come from, I think it's pretty much a given that the city and its policies, its priorities, is oriented far more toward the needs of the entities which occupy these structures at Canary Wharf than the human being who occupied structures like this, which you're all familiar with, Grenfell Tower. So this is not merely practically unacceptable. To me, it's morally unacceptable. To me, this is not a vision of post-humanity that I wish to endorse, a vision of post-humanity that I wish to see continued. Let's start somewhere else, shall we? Let's start not with fanciful renderings, imagined dreamscapes, cities that never existed anywhere and never will exist. And let's certainly not start with cities oriented towards the need of capital and entities which will never have feelings, never have experiences, never even have values that they can articulate for themselves. Let's start somewhere else entirely. Let's start with this. If we are indeed in a post-human economy, I would argue to you that a post-human economy requires a post-human politics. Let's start with a politics that recognizes that we are not merely consumers of space or indeed of anything else in our environment, but that we are the creators of our spaces, our environments, our habitats, our domains, the places where we live. Let us start with an assumption under our new politics that we are not actants. We're not simply the things stuck together between the things that have actual agency and power in the world, but we are in fact the agents of our own destiny. We are able to understand, learn from, learn to use, manipulate the technologies all around us in our own interest. Let us start from the conviction that we are not operands. We're not merely factors in somebody else's code, pushing us around from one register to another without any volition, agency, or sense. Let us propose instead that we are the subjects of urban space, radically new, possessed of capabilities no human cohort has ever before had access to, possessed of the political and social conscience to make use of them in emancipatory and liberatory ways, in a moment that requires this of us. If a post-human moment is upon us, if it appears at times hegemonic, if it appears that it operates at scales and speeds which are beyond our understanding, beyond our ability to comprehend, intervene in, and manipulate, we need to ask ourselves, is there a place for tactics? Is there a place for subjectivity? Is there a place for our agency? How can we enact the conditions of justice under these new circumstances? How can we grasp and utilize these technologies in ways that speak to our deeper aspirations, our solidarity with one another, our commitment to ourselves, and the earthly environment that has been the cradle of our humanity and our becoming since we first walked upright upon 2 feet, looked each other in the face, and spoke to one another? How can we devise a home for the human and a place to dwell upon the earth in a world that is rapidly absconding from our understanding? Thank you very much for your time and attention. I look forward to discussing these questions with you.
That was amazing. You hear me? Is my mic on? Yeah. Thanks, Adam. That was fantastic. And my head is reeling, and I'm sure you guys are both just trying to process some of that stuff. And I guess, maybe just to say a few things, and then I'll maybe ask Lorna first of all, maybe just to play back some of the key things that you're picking up there. Some of the I love the notion of the repaired object, which is stronger. Resilience is a word that we often kind of use, is more resilient and tougher and durable than the original version. And also, I loved your points about about trust and the social thing, that social, what's it called, that social measure?
Social credit.
Social credit which is new to me, is a very kind of scary kind of concept. And that, I guess underneath that whole sort of what makes us human, that interaction and that personal connection that makes us human beings is fundamentally challenged by some of the things that you're putting in front of us today. Lots and lots of things, and I guess and you came back to housing, and you covered a huge scale, and this whole notion of what it is to be, the age I'm at. I remember when the digital stuff first arrived, there was a horrible phrase which is, geography is history. They used to say that the technology would make place irrelevant, therefore we won't be living in cities. We'd all be living in tropical islands or in the Highlands of Scotland. We could choose, but hey, who knew? We all still choose to be in cities, and even though the functionality of cities is changing, and as you said, the kind of the structures for which things were created, that purpose has kind of disappeared. The queues of people waiting, we still have that. We're still in this huge transitional kind of moment. So it's brilliant, and it's great to get us started. Thanks so much. It's been absolutely spot on. So Lorna, just your role is about trying to second guess, anticipate. I mentioned earlier on about trying to react and trying to the catch-up agenda. Maybe just pick out a couple of the many things that Adam touched upon that you think are worth us kind of latching onto as we get into a conversation about this. Oh yeah, and you'll need a mic, won't you? Yeah. And by the way, great job for our interpreters. Adam really stress tested the people in the box there, so thank you very much for hanging in there and keeping that in tune for all of us. So Lorna, yeah.
Hello everyone. Is that on?
Try again.
Working?
Should be working. The guys at the back will, you keep talking. Yeah.
So my head is going, and also I felt quite emotionally connected to what you said as well. So what I'll try to do is, there's a couple of things, sort of themes that you talked about, Adam, that I think are really important, particularly for social housing providers, in terms of the practical things that they could do, and things for them to think about. So the first thing that's in my head is around the whole theme of participation and how that can help to shift power. And particularly at the end, you talked about the potential there. So you finished on an optimistic note, which I also like to do too. We have a saying in Scotland, and it's community activists who use this saying, and it is, nothing about us without us is for us. And I like that quite a lot, and I think it's really important for social housing providers in particular to think carefully about how they can work with and engage the people that they're there for at every stage of a process, whether that's about services or products or places, from generating ideas to working with people to create things right through to delivery. And you can see there's lots of examples where that hasn't worked. One agency in Glasgow recently developed a lovely website which they were very proud of and hardly anybody has used. Yeah. And there's also a physical development, a waterside development in Scotland, which again is lovely, and it's leisure facilities, but the local people don't use the facility. Tourists use it, but local people don't use it because it wasn't created with them. They don't think it's for them. And we can take great inspiration from this country, and I would love to learn more about Estonia. And I think the work that's been done around democratic participation in this country must be closely linked to the success in terms of inclusive growth here as well. And my personal experience is that if you bring people together who otherwise wouldn't have the chance to meet each other, like today, but also include people with a lived experience, different perspectives, backgrounds, you'll always get a much better and more sustainable and deeper and richer solution. So that's my first. Do you want me to pause there?
Yeah, why don't you pause there and we'll bring Kimmo in. Do you want to, again, maybe a couple of one or two things which you'd really like to pick out just to get us started?
Yes. First of all, this you said about citizens that they are not objects, they are subjects. And that is something that is really changing our cities. And actually, I said this before you. The Finnish word kaupunki, it's city. There is in the middle word punk. So it's it's when you the mission of the city is to give the citizens to do what they want. It's very important because they are, for example, in Helsinki, they are very well educated. They know what to do. How should we say them what to do? Because they know what to do. We just have to have trust and maybe rise this level of trust in the city. And if we talk about the role of social housing companies, I see very important role because they have to think what is the mission of the company. Is it what is the purpose of the business? Is it to make profit to the owners, or could it be the create value for the community? So it's value creation. And if you think of the role of a social housing company in your world, so then we can see the world much more wider. It's not only house, it's working opportunities, it's new business opportunities, it's ways, new paths for those who need help to rise up and do something valuable for yourself and valuable for the community. And my point as a result of this is it's all about dialogue. Mm-hmm. It's all about ability to listen. You know, we have two of these and only one of these. So keep that always in your mind. So it's very important to start to listen and listen carefully. What are they really wanted to say? What is the purpose of everything? So great. I was so on fire.
Thanks, Kimmo. And maybe just to bring Adam back in, I think you're mic'd up, Adam, aren't you? So you're okay in terms of, so this question about participation, this notion of kind of new collaborative models, dialogue, a redistribution of power. You know, what you said is very political. You showed that terrible image of Grenfell Tower, you know, which is, and it was all immediately after the Canary Wharf, that striking kind of contrast between what are we trying to do here, which is about values, about principles. These are really fundamental questions about how we want to live. And this in terms of, I guess, if you think of tech as a tool, maybe just come back to these guys and say, what are clearly there are some pitfalls, but where are the opportunities for us to use this kind of stuff more effectively to build that trust, to have that authentic conversation? Maybe you've seen you see lots of examples. Maybe just kind of chip in. And
Yeah, one of the examples is a slide that I showed an image of, and I rushed through the presentation, so I didn't really get a chance to get into it deeply. Do you remember the slide? It's a young woman who's tinkering on a rooftop with a box filled with electronic equipment. She's part of something called the Red Hook Initiative. Red Hook is a neighborhood in Brooklyn. It is largely African American, largely run down, a former dock waterside community which had seen better times throughout most of the 20th century and fallen on hard times. What the Red Hook Initiative is all about is also a place, it was kind of a connectivity black hole. It wasn't considered to be worthwhile bringing broadband to that community. It wasn't considered to be a valuable target audience. What the Red Hook Initiative is all about, and I think there are really important lessons here for housing provision and other services as well as connectivity, is teaching the people themselves of Red Hook to deploy what's called a mesh ad hoc wireless network. So something that doesn't depend on the usual top-down delivery of broadband connectivity, but actually allows building to building to building propagation of the internet signal, so that people, a mesh of small institutions, of communities, of buildings that are conscious of their own role in the community, even of unaffiliated individuals coming together, learning how this technology works. Not necessarily learning how to code, because I don't think that learning to code is for everybody. It's for people who enjoy that. There are other skills that we need just as badly as coding. But giving the people themselves insight into this arcane technology, allowing them to master it and to share it with one another. It's not as mysterious as all that, it turns out. It's not as intimidating as we think it is. And, you know, I'm not going to say that I wouldn't have expected these people to do that, because I think that's frankly racist and condescending. But you do hear that a lot. You see a lot of surprise, like, oh my goodness, people can figure out how to produce mesh wireless networks and add themselves to them. Of course they can. Of course they can. We need to realize the ingenuity, the creativity, the capacity that's in our communities. By doing that, by demystifying the technology, by giving people the ability to deploy it themselves, they empower themselves in multiple dimensions at once, and they acquire two other very, very valuable things. They acquire a sense of their connection to a broader purpose and community, and they acquire a sense of that community as an empowered organism. Yeah. And I hope that that has direct implications for the work that you do.
Yeah, and that might also, you know, you touched upon at the start of the presentation the future of work and the whole, you know, think about the Amazon wristbands where they're tracking people's productivity, that whole sort of sense of us, you know, the conversation about a universal basic income around the kind of prospect that fewer and fewer of us will work in future. So what does that actually mean to be a citizen? And I guess one of the key things about social housing providers is they have that trusted link with their tenants, with their customers, with their communities. They have that sort of opportunity to look at their lives in the round, to look at their working lives, the quality of their housing. This is not just about a kind of landlord-renter relationship. It's more complex than that. And maybe, I mean, from the Red Hook example, do we see the role of housing associations changing in relation to how they engage with their tenants and how they help them mediate some of this kind of scary unknown stuff which is out there? Do we see different kinds of capacity building? Is the kind of relationship shifting a bit? I mean, Lorna, can you see that from the work that you're doing?
I think so, and I think that's a fabulous example. In terms of looking to the future, I don't know how people will live and work in 30 or 50 years' time, but we definitely need to start thinking about it. And there are some things that we do know. So, is it 1/3 of today's babies will live till their 100th birthday? So we need to be places need to allow the babies to thrive, the people to live and work, and then the 100-year-old person to be happy and safe and included. But as well as the design of the places, I think that there is a really important role, and probably an increasing role, for housing associations in creating space for these kinds of connections, so human connections and networks. I actually took a day off work about 2 months ago, one day on holiday, went to my local shops, and there was an elderly lady trying to cross the road, and she was struggling, she was frail. I helped her across the road, walked to the shop, and I was with her for about 5 minutes. And in that 5 minutes, she told me that she used to be a scientist involved in pioneering medical research. And I told her about my life. And at the end of the 5 minutes, she hugged me and she said, and she was crying, she said, "Thank you for talking to me." And of all the conversations I've had this year, the 5 minutes with the old lady, who I will probably never see again, has probably had one of the biggest impacts on me, because it taught me the importance of stopping and looking around and connecting with people for my well-being, but for the community's well-being. And it's not just old people who are lonely. I did some research with young people recently, and they told us that they use social media for social things, but they are still looking for human connection, particularly when they've got something important to talk about.
I looked, just moving on to the Finnish conversation, I was in Helsinki about 6 months ago looking at a new network of kind of career spaces for young people, which are co-designed, they're called Ohjaamo, which are co-designed with young people. And some interesting things came out of the co-design process. One was these young people who are obviously all digital natives. They wanted a low-tech environment and most critically, a trusted connection with a named human being who was their person. So they've been through the whole thing about you have your own unique reference number, you have this, that, and the other, and they're cool with all of that. But the most important thing they wanted to see in these spaces was a human being who had that trusted relationship with. And we think of Finland as a place which is, has a strong tradition of bottom-up, strong culture of localism. And again, I mean, the same thing. Do you see, Kimmo, a shift? Do you see big changes, or is this more of an evolutionary kind of process in a place where maybe the power has been better redistributed than some other parts of Europe? I might be wrong here. What's happening?
Yes, many things are happening now, and you all know this old slogan, what is important in real estate business. It's this, location. That is, forget it. In the future, it's about location, community, and purpose. So, and if you think cities like this, there are many cities inside the cities, and think of those blocks and neighborhoods that can create their own, some kind of own purpose, own mission of their own vision. And it's just new tools for cities, new tools for companies. It's these facilitating tools. It's making maybe some promotion, some feeding and encouraging and helping people have and this dialogue, listening and because in many cases the problems becomes then when those who talk too much can have the power. So it's limited amount of time for a team. It's important to facilitate and have a good dialogue methods. That is what we actually. I know that in Finland we are developing totally new dialogue methods for workshops and meetings and as well panels and so it's very important. This is a good panel. I think this way of not having speeches, but like we are creating something. Yeah. But and also I talk about this. Why this citizen engagement is so important, because it saves money. It's very cost efficient. I used to talk when I was working in a social housing company that it's very cost efficient to use to talk with the people, because they might know the solutions. So they are like consultants of the citizens.
Yeah. Who knew? They actually have got something to contribute. Yeah. And on the power topic, and thinking about what this means for governance and what it means for because I think at the beginning Cédric said this is a century of the city. We this whole mayors rule the world, Benjamin Barber type stuff. So we've got this interesting time where the nation states are frankly struggling to deal with a whole range of things, and some as we are more urbanized. and as the kind of prevalent challenges, environmental issues, for example, are mainly being tackled at the city level. So we've got this really interesting kind of urban agenda running, but huge implications for how our cities are run. And we've talked about democracy, you've talked about power, we've talked about the role of tech. And clearly, you know, coming from a country where the whole mantra is about taking back control, and this time next year we won't even be part of the EU, and the whole Trump thing about, you know, the role of social media. So, you know, we see a number of ways in which tech is spinning this whole question of governance. And I suppose my kind of question related to this is, you know, the cities which I see doing this well, Aarhus is one of them, Seoul in South Korea, Wonsan Park is another one, are cities where there's a kind of almost post-heroic leadership where politicians are becoming more, they are aware of the need to let go and the need to be more relaxed about letting people come in and fill that space and contribute. But they're in the minority still, and they're still the outliers. And I don't know, from again, Adam, just your thoughts on that whole thing about what are the key messages we need those new breed of politicians to be taking on board to help us have a better dialogue and a better way of collaborating as we go forward?
Well, I think post-heroic is a fantastic framing. I would extend it, if I might, not merely a post-heroic generation of politicians, but for those politicians to themselves understand that technology has become post-heroic, that we expect, you know, moonshots, that the language that we still use around things, even Google, when they talk about their ambition, they'll discuss moonshots as though they're President Kennedy in 1961. And the fact is that technology is much more intimate than that. And what I find in my work is that the most functionally effective technologies are actually the least glamorous. When I was involved with Occupy Sandy, for example, an outgrowth of Occupy Wall Street that responded to Superstorm Sandy, it was absolutely built on technology, but the two things it was built on were text messages and an Amazon wedding registry of Sandy and Sandy, to which people sent gifts that were then used for disaster relief and recovery. So neither one of these was, you know, it wasn't like blockchain, right? I mean, we're still making the mistake. I have friends in Switzerland, you know, they're like, well, you know, you've heard of Silicon Valley. Well, this is Crypto Valley. That's the wrong idea. There's not going to be one heroic, massive moonshot technology that's going to change everything. It's a question of intimate spaces, intimate scales, and personal relationships. And technology applied at that level in a way almost, you know, like the appropriate technology discussions of the late 1960s and early 1970s. That sensitivity to need and scale. If we can talk of that post-heroic technology implementation, I think that's something that generation of politicians would be very, very well advised to take on board and would have a great deal of headway with.
Great. And Lorna, do you see from your perspective, again, this political question, this question of governance, you know, lots of conversations going on across Europe about the affordability of cities. We're going to talk about Airbnb later today and that whole displacement conversation and the kind of struggle to, how do you harness all this great new stuff without, you know, making our cities, you know, widening inequalities and exacerbating some of the fundamental things which we struggle with and are trying to get right. So do you see in the work that you're doing, do you see a kind of, is it penny dropping with some of the politicians you work with, city leaders? Is there a more encouraging conversation about how we rebalance and bring people in, or are we still in the kind of old mindset of we've got the answers, we've got some moonshots, hey, isn't this tech's going to fix everything? Where do you think we are around that conversation?
I think there are some encouraging signs.
Yeah.
So I think we do need to have different types of leadership, and I think there are examples of that happening. So in Glasgow, there is a poverty leadership panel, which is made up of people who have got direct experience of poverty, and politicians, and lots of other people. So and everything is done together. And so people with experience of poverty are part of the solution, and all the priorities were really set by them. And so the politicians have bought into that, which is really good. And there are other examples in Scotland of that kind of way of working. In terms of social housing, in Scotland we're starting a housing innovation community, and the politicians are also involved in that, and that's about bringing people together, again, to think about visions for the future, prototypes of things, and practical tools as well, which will be open to everyone too. So, yeah, I'm optimistic overall.
Okay, that's what I like to hear. Kimmo, how about you? I mean, again, this whole thing about shifting power, new leadership, we've talked about kind of distributed mod, distribution's been another one of these kind of keywords that's run through things, connected with localism. Do you see kind of around governance a different attitudes towards this conversation from elected officials, for example?
Yes, one simple thing is just do it.
Yeah.
Don't plan, just do it, and you learn by doing, by doing.
Yeah.
And it's very also very cost efficient. just do it, and let things happen. But we have also, new design rules, because this transformation of urban land use, as you said, we need new rules, but it's also new approaches, and the approach is human-centric approach. We should think what are the really human-centric feelings, empathy. It's these user experiences. We have to. I'm an engineer, so I have to learn more how to talk about face-to-face. We should measure the amount of seeing people in the city instead of being in the net, and how to create seeing and meeting and talking. I remember there was one design rule called 5-stop tactic, meaning that I gave this to architect that designed this in block-like, at least 5 stop before you go to home. and if you create these good meeting points, seeing points, you increase the people knowing their neighbors. And that is you. And then the second thing is, if we think what is the most difficult or the difficult problem in big cities, it's the loneliness. It's loneliness. So we need new urban spaces like common spaces. And I have this rule of the city of tomorrow. It's easy to remember. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you remember it. Okay, shall I say it? Okay, it's you in the future or today. You live alone or together with somebody. The third room is in the block. The fourth room is in the city. So in understanding this is like a new structure of a city. And because you need these common spaces, places where they meet, because the apartments are getting smaller and smaller. Yeah. You have to get people out of the building. Accessibility is great because then you can go there, but you need to get people out of there. So then you need something to happen. You need events. You need, people are shy and maybe you have to push. Come on, enjoy. Yeah. So we have to have fun factor as well. Yeah, absolutely. And a reason for doing it. And and you've talked in some of your interviews and various films out about this bubble we build around us. We walk around with our phones, and you also mentioned it, Lorna, in terms of chance encounter, that bumping into someone because you're in the moment. You have that connection, as you say, it has deep meaning in a way that all the other stuff that rushes past us may not have, because it's authentic, it's real, it's human. And maybe Adam, maybe just in terms of wrapping up our conversation here, maybe a couple of final things, thoughts to leave us with for today, things that you think have played back here that you think are important for people to bear in mind before we wrap up this final session?
A tension that I always live with, and it's already emerged in the course of our conversation here, is that when you deregulate, when you open up the prospect for people to manage themselves, to me, there's sort of an unfortunate dovetailing or an happenstance alignment of what we might think of as these bottom-up, self-organized, robustly anarchist values with neoliberal values, right? And to my mind, I hope I'm not offending anybody in the audience, that's absolutely to be prevented. When you deregulate, when you open up opportunities for people, this is wonderful, but those spaces can very, very frequently be dominated by incumbent actors, by forces in society that already have the capacity, the capital, the potential, the power to dominate those spaces. And what I think we need to do is very carefully design these moments, these spaces, and these interactions so that they can be genuinely inhabited by local people acting on their own initiative, and not simply cosmetically offered for them as a palliative or a hygienic measure, or you all recall the ladder of citizen participation, this lovely figure that Sherry Arnstein offers in 1969. At the very bottom of that ladder are sort of hygienic measures or therapeutic measures where people have the appearance of participation, but not the actual power to determine the circumstances of their own being. And what I would like to suggest that we all do together is, whenever possible, push things up that ladder towards actual agency, empowerment, and the ability for people to control things. That's a long-term objective, and it requires nurturing and stewardship of the spaces in which it's happening. But I think it leads to a great deal more value, just even on the personal level of encounter with one another. And at the risk of sounding deeply conservative, I think it's the encounter with one another that generates all of the value in our lives. I think it's being emotionally present with one another as people, and being forced to reckon with our differences that generates the vitality that any great urban place is ultimately founded on. So, series of objectives to bear in mind as we proceed in these adventures. But I think that we have the tools in hand, and we've acquired sophistication over the years of using these tools that we maybe didn't have before. We now know what they're good for, what they're not good for, and I think that the field is open for some really amazing things to happen.
Fantastic. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Kimmo. Thank you, Lorna. We're going to go for a quick caffeine injection now. We're going to come back in at 11:30. You have a chance to jump into a couple of innovation shots. One is about the Housing Europe Summer School, and the other is about a project called Heart. They're both being played outside in the cafeteria. But before we go, can we say a big thanks and a huge round of applause to our panelists and to Adam, our keynote speaker. Thanks very much. Okay, thanks a lot, folks. Thanks, Kimmo, that's great. Thanks, Lorna. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Eddie. You're right, man.
Well done. Great job.
That was great. Thank you. Thanks so much.
The slides are amazing. Great images, actually. It must have taken you ages to